Hi, I'm Ryan Johnson. I wrote and directed this film,
I'm Joe Gordon-Levitt, and I'm in it.
and this horse is coming right at us!
But this is the old logo, right?
No, it's not. We really wanted to get the old 90s TriStar logo.
It's pretty remnant.
No, this is new school. No, I wanted the old one where the Pegasus comes and flies and that optical effect happens and the wings come out that were on those great old movies.
I just saw a Pegasus.
And no, it's a different Pegasus. This is going well already. I feel like we're giving the home entertainment buyer
Their money's
their
worth.
money's worth. So, company logos.
When you have a production company, what's your logo
I
gonna
am
be?
not going to have it's a pet peeve of mine. This is a great way to start the commentary by complaining about the logos of the people who financed it. It's a huge pet peeve of mine, actually, those huge, long, 3-minute long animated logos. Anyway, hey, look, it's a movie. So, this first shot was kind of because we did this whole thing with your face that we'll go into at some length. I felt like it was going to be really nice to have this first shot be something that just puts it right out there, and we start just looking at your face, and we take a nice long look at you and kind of come around you and take the time to kind of absorb what's going on face-wise.
I remember when we shot this particular shot, we went and did a whole touch-ups session. Went back to the trailer and gave Jamie a good half hour to make everything totally perfect with the face.
You never get a second chance to make a first impression. And actually, in that same shot, in a lot of that field stuff, you can see, because we didn't have a lot of space to work with that corn, you can actually see the outline of what is Sarah's house.
It's
back
cane,
behind there.
not corn.
Oh, cane, yeah.
It used to be corn in the early drafts.
In the script, it was corn, yeah, but you can't find corn in Louisiana, where we shot. This location, this power plant was, this kind of old abandoned power plant was an absolutely gorgeous location, and it was a safety nightmare. And it was also the backside of it is where we also shot the sequence where Bruce gets put in the time machine, and also kind of the flashback where you see Zach closing his loop when you're explaining.
Right.
But this place was, it just looked like this. We didn't do a thing to it, and it was stunning. We put that hatch type thing in, but everything else is just the way this place looked.
And this was actually the first day of shooting, if I remember.
This was day -1.
Right.
Yeah, we cheated. We did like a couple of quote unquote test shoot days where we actually snuck that in. I feel like now.
This is no longer the first day of shooting.
No, this is not.
How's a French?
Slow. How's a coffee?
We built this diner. This was a build. Both the exterior, it was an interior-exterior set, which means that it was what it was. There wasn't a separate set for in and out, and we built it out there in the middle of nowhere. And it was funny because locals would actually stop in and ask the construction team when it was going to open up. They were really excited to have a new diner in the town.
So where did you get the term blunderbuss?
Well, blunderbuss that is an actual gun. It's an old style gun, which is actually, it's the function of it is the same as this one. It's kind of just a hand cannon. Blunderbusses are flared at the end. They're in the old Thanksgiving paintings.
Right.
They're what the pilgrims are
Aaron Burr.
carrying. Aaron Burr, exactly. This is back to day 9. This was the first stuff that we shot with you, I think, right?
Right.
Yeah.
This was the same day as...
No, this was at day -2.
That was my hair loss joke that I threw in there.
That was Joe's. I'm always happy when people catch that. And all this kind of vamping at the beginning, for whatever reason, for all the stuff with the loopers, I had been watching a bunch of... I had gone back to Godard. I had gone back to watching a bunch of French New Wave stuff because I wanted there to be kind of like a loose... the way that it feels when the people hang out in those movies and the kind of loose casualness of it. And so that thing with the gun directly to the camera felt a little like that.
Belmundo.
So you can see the way that we kind of did the city here, our approach to the city. This was a long stretch of O'Keefe Street in New Orleans. And we dressed the entire length of it. That was a huge, huge deal for us on our budget, was dressing the length of that whole street. And all the stuff you see on the ground is actual dressing. And we'll be coming back to that street right after the scene. But, for instance, the broken down buildings in the background and the graffiti, not there, but if we go back to the wide, no, we're not going.
So you bought a slap bike.
Basically anything deep background where huge stuff is done to, like that little thing that big thing on the wall back there. Obviously the stoplights, those are added digitally, but everything else, all this dressing you see back behind was all practical.
People intense.
Yeah, Ed Verreau, our production designer. And this was a practical effect. Paul actually had a little rig with the quarter on a little wire
Right.
that he fed up through his finger.
Not a digital quarter.
No. That was a big pain in the butt, but I actually was really insistent on was for all the little stuff that was going to float around in the movie, that we put stuff on wires and shoot it for real. Just because I always feel like, if something is made digitally that's supposed to be floating, first of all, your eye goes straight to it because you expect it to be a digital object, so you're scrutinizing it even more.
Yeah.
And there's always that kind of cartoony feel to it. So.
It still does.
Yeah.
One day we'll actually believe the digitally created things, but for me, it's not there yet.
No, you see some great work that's done, but the face was the first digital versus practical discussion we had. It was a very brief discussion.
Yeah, we always wanted to do it with makeup. Huh?
Well, facial. Anytime you start digitally doing something to what's supposed to be a realistic human face as opposed to an alien face, you can't do it. It looks ridiculous.
I agree.
Piper!
There's Piper.
Uh-huh. I'm excited to on the DVD. Originally there was a little exchange there with you and Noah Segan. Oh, see right here. This is a practical quarter just hung by a string.
Right.
And we actually tried. We painted it out because the effects guys were like, "Don't you want the quarter to have more play and fly around?" And I was like, "Well, give it a shot." And we tried it, and it never looked right to my eye. And so I said, even though it's just going to be hanging there, put it back and just paint out the string, and let's go with the original quarter.
Uh-huh. Oh, so you tried a cartoon quarter?
Yeah, we tried. We gave it a shot. Yeah. The blunder, just like little technical things, the blunderbuss blast, that was all, we shot kind of like a particular gun and matted in the blast, the flare effect afterwards.
Right.
On set, we had a little thing in the gun to create the smoke, but the actual flare was after the fact.
And we'll kill him like any other job.
Oh, look, there's Emily.
What? Look who's just shown up in the studio with us.
You guys are amazing.
Ladies and gentlemen, just appeared out of nowhere. Looper-like Miss Emily Blunt.
Hi, Loops.
Yay. Hi, Emily.
Hi.
How are you?
Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being here. Emily, you're great in this scene.
I am fantastic
You're
in this
terrific.
scene. That's me, right?
Yeah, that's you.
Yeah, and that's me also.
That's it. Already. It's my cousin Adam who just went by on the right. There are like 30 Johnsons in this movie.
We already just saw
Doesn't
your dad. didn't
yeah,
we?
did
Yeah.
I miss your dad?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even mention. Yeah, well, we'll come back around to him. My dad
All right.
plays the bouncer.
I love
So-
your dad in the movie.
I love this shot.
Yeah.
This was fun. So we actually, the way that we shot this, this was Steve Yedlin's idea, the cinematographer. We shot it full frame. We didn't shoot it anamorphic. We shot basically a square format, and then we went in and cropped it and did the spin digitally just so we could get it perfect, just because we knew it would be a nightmare if we tried to physically spin the camera. This kid was so good.
Where
Natural.
did you find him?
It just local casting. He was in New Orleans, and I wish I remember his name, but he was so good, and he was such a trooper because it was cold out there, and so we would have heat lamps, and then we would pull the blankets off him, and we'd do a take really quick.
Yeah.
And there was, it might be in the deleted scenes, I'm not sure. Originally, he flips Joe off.
Yeah.
And he didn't know what flipping off was.
Oh, bless his heart.
And so I asked his dad if it was okay, and then basically I like showed him how to hold his hand. He thought it was silly. He didn't know what it meant.
Oh, good.
And then I worked his hand like from underneath like a puppeteer and jerked it up into frame. I'm probably gonna get arrested by child services now.
What's that? Fourth loop closed this month?
There we go, man.
It was so amazing for me watching this part of the movie because I wasn't privy to
You weren't
any
around
of it.
for any of it. Yeah,
None of it.
schedule-wise, we did like the first half of the shoot in New Orleans in the city, and then you only showed up really when we moved out to Thibodeau
Yeah.
for the farm stuff.
Right.
So yeah, this is all new. This music track, this is one of like a montage segment set to this music track, so we can talk a little bit about Nathan Johnson.
This music is phenomenal.
good,
I mean,
yeah.
he's
Cool.
such a talent. It's spooky.
Yeah, he did. Did you guys see those videos that he?
I saw the first one. I got to watch the second one.
He put this video online, Emily. That's like it's showing how he created the score just using found sounds mostly.
Because that's really what he works from a lot. Is that right?
Well, in this one it was. In Bloom, it was more traditional instruments. Brick, it was kind of like found sounds. But this, it was really heavily digitally manipulating the sounds and slowing them down 3,000% and just
and like, what's an
creating-
example of a found sound
he
that
would
you find?
he would record like for the percussion, for instance. He had Noah bring the Gat gun into his studio, and he recorded all the little clicks and clacks it made, and then he basically manipulated those sounds and built a drum kit out of it.
Wow.
And but he recorded like the treadmill in his apartment in New Orleans, and then slowed it down and found this natural rhythm in it.
Also worth mentioning Sun Lux, his collaborator.
Yes.
He's really good at that stuff.
Sun Lux was a heavy duty collaboration.
I love Paul in this
Paul
scene.
Dano.
Great.
Yeah.
So I don't know why he asked. What did you do?
This was fairly early in the shoot, and I remember this. I'm not remembering right, but this might have been the first like heavy scene that we did.
Yeah, I think that's
and,
right.
And I remember there was like when Paul came in and brought it up to that level of emotion, there was definitely a shift on the set of people kind of, the guy with the sack over his head. He was a local extra. He's a really sweet guy, and he was I told him to sing a song, and he said underneath the sack. And he asked what song. I said, it doesn't matter, just something you can sing over and over again. And so he sung I see the producers out there looking at me nervously. I'm not going to sing a copyrighted song.
No, you can say it.
He sung I believe it was a LSU fight song. And he just sung it over and over and over.
What's
and
LSU?
It's a university. It's in Louisiana
Louisiana
State
okay.
University. And he sung it over and over and over again. And just for the rest of the shoot, just we'd be hanging around the camera cart, and then someone would say the first verse, and everyone would hate them.
15 strides till he's out of my range. And they come and they go.
That location, that was just, that's another thing where we just stepped into and found it like that. Joe's apartment was a build. This was one of our few on-stage builds where because we had all the gag with jumping out the window and falling into the den and everything, we decided to Ed Verreau.
To not actually let Joe jump out.
Not actually, no, we figured because it was early in the shoot.
We needed him a
A
little.
lot to get done, to get to the real stuff.
That sound is amazing.
I remember we worked on that sound. I was like,
You did?
no, it's more of a... He thought I was a little nuts. Noah Segan, ladies and gentlemen. Yay.
Here comes Kid Blue.
Here comes Kid Blue.
Kid Blue's entrance is, to me, the funniest moment in the movie.
And no one ever laughs at it. I think me and you are the only two that find it really funny. And it has yet to get a laugh in the theater. But I think it's really funny too.
I gotta say, one of the hardest things to play is sheer terror, and I think Paul does an amazing job. It's a tough thing to play,
Yeah.
to play over and over,
I can't imagine how exhausted he was at the end of this day. This was such a grueling, emotional scene, and we just spent the whole day doing it. That little thumbs up that he does, Paul came up with that. I think
No,
that's
it is funny.
Isn't that great?
It is funny.
Jesus.
Because you already know as he comes through the door that he's not great with a gun. You just know it's all for show.
I think it might be funnier if you know Noah.
Maybe,
I
maybe.
think that's maybe the trick to it. Yeah. But yeah,
Coffee in the tin.
Mr. Paul Dano. It was real. I was just so blown away that he was down for coming out for doing that part.
I
'cause
remember
Paul's-
when I found out that he was going to do it, I was like, really?
Yeah,
That's
me too.
fantastic.
Yeah, me too. The fact that we could, an actor of his caliber, and that he was psyched about coming out and doing these couple of scenes.
Where was this
pretty amazing.
location?
This was another build. This was like all that concrete is actually just foam. It's just terrific set design. But this, for some reason, I had this really specific layout in my head where it was a temporary space and the door was set up high in the wall, and there was just like a ad hoc ladder that they had set up. And for whatever reason, I just had this really specific layout in my head, and we were never going to find it. So, so we decided to just build it. And Noah did a lot of training, a lot of gun spinning
is like
training.
he's really good. He got really good at it.
Yeah.
He got calluses on his index finger.
Oh, he did?
He was really into the gun. He found like a guy who trained him and everything. That little fumble that he did with the gun was an actual mistake that he's probably pissed at it.
He worked for months so that he could do it flawlessly, and then he used the mistake.
This is my other favorite moment in the movie.
This is what it's actually like between me and Noah.
It's true. It's a typical lunch.
Amazing.
Yeah. We had to work a lot on that moment,
Now,
actually.
how did you do that?
Well, I mean, it's just perspective. I mean, the thing just swipes back behind his
Right.
head, and he moves with it. The sound, that like having that distinct cartoony scream was something we added. Was something we added kind of late because we found that it needed it. Yeah. That moment, it just took a lot of playing with to find how to get it to land. It was playing flat for a while.
Is this Jeff Daniels' first?
This is Jeff
Yeah.
Daniels.
Yeah, he's so good, man.
He was so cool, man.
This is my second movie with Jeff.
Is it?
We were in a movie together called The Lookout
Mr. Scott Frank.
that
ladies
Scott
and
Frank wrote
gentlemen.
and directed.
Yes.
And so it was so cool to get back with him.
Yeah.
It was like right away, easy, comfortable.
That's a big part of why. I mean, besides just the fact that it's Jeff Daniels, that was a big part of the reason why I thought it'd be so good. Just the dynamic you guys had in that movie, I could see it translating really well to what was going to happen here. And he was so excited. I remember he told Sharon Davis, our costume designer, he told her how excited he was about his costume because it's basically a velvet robe. It's so comfortable.
I was just gonna say.
He's like, I can die in this.
I mean, he's so comfortable, not only in the robe but on screen in general. He is eased back in that chair.
Jeff, he was the coolest dude. He would have his guitar. He had like a little portable electric guitar with headphones. And in between takes, he would just sit and like work on his guitar.
That's a guy who's been
He's a
on a
good
lot of
guitarist.
sets.
Yeah.
And then you gave me one of those guitars as
I
a rep
did.
gift.
That's right.
Very sweet.
Figure you use it. You can see on the table the hammer right there. And there was actually originally a beat in this scene where, I forget if we put it in the deleted scenes, there was originally a beat in this scene where halfway in there, in the conversation, just at a random point, there's a lull, and your eyes flit down. It's a ways after he said, "We're not going to smash your hands with a hammer," and your eyes flit down to it, and he looks down, and he goes, that's just here for something else later. That's a bad coincidence I'm doing. But for some reason, it played better on paper than it did. Just for whatever reason, the scene didn't end up needing it. It's an interesting thing what you get into it, what you end up cutting, and why. You have so many deleted scenes. And some of my favorite like individual scenes are actually in the deleted scenes or on the cutting room floor. That scene with you and Garrett in the basement.
How dare you?
I know.
Right.
How?
Maybe if you had been a little better, Garrett's good work would still be in the movie.
Didn't bring it. Sorry, Garrett.
Bring that on.
It's funny though. It must be even more surreal for you when you write a script, and that what works on the page is sometimes not what translates, and then what you think will just be an average scene is going to be way more than you ever anticipated.
Yeah, I mean that's all you guys, that's the fun of it, is just being surprised by seeing how you guys bring it to life. But it's true. There's I feel like if there was like one writing superpower I could ask for, it'd be the ability to see in the writing phase what's actually not necessary. But and maybe as I get better, that'll
Because you're terrible right now.
I'm pretty awful at it. Well, no, but you get to the end of the editing process and you're like, oh my God, there's like 45 minutes of scenes that we didn't need.
Right.
Shouldn't I have been able to see that in the
While we
script
were
phase
writing.
Right.
and then have all those production days to spend shooting the stuff we are going to keep?
Right.
But it's just a consistent thing where until you get the whole thing together as a living, breathing thing, you don't know what needs to go and what needs to stay. You know?
Especially with a movie with this kind of complexity, too. It's probably better to get more.
Right. The makeup in this shot, if the
It's
makeup was
so
ever
extraordinary.
going to hold up or not hold up, it was in a shot like this. And Kazuhiro Suji, who's our makeup designer, was just a genius.
Yeah, I love Kazu so much. Kazu and I, I'll take the time to say at this point, I guess, Kazu and I first worked together on G.I. Joe Rise of Cobra. He did my crazy prosthetics on that. And then when Ryan and I were speaking about this character and how we were going to do it, even from the very beginning, we were like, it's going to be a makeup thing. Because we talked briefly about doing it digitally, and neither of us really liked that idea.
Yeah.
So it would be a makeup thing. And I instantly was like, we should really talk to Kazu. I know he normally does like bigger budget things than this, but he and I made friends, and I think he might really get a kick out of this. And I was so happy when he agreed to do it.
Mm-hmm. And Jamie, who applied the makeup every
Amazing.
single day.
Jamie Kellman.
Jamie Kellman, he because it was an art form unto itself.
The application.
The application and the maintenance. I mean, and he found out during the course of it, because when you would sweat, little bubbles would rise in it.
Right.
So he had to go in with a pin and pop those. It was.
I got to say, you, Joe, giving the performance that you did with the amount of face prodding that you dealt with throughout the course
the
of
amount of needles pushed in your face.
just endlessly prodded at the entire day after each take. They were like, hold on.
So this actor here, Frank Brennan, was a local actor, and he was just fantastic. He spent, I forget how many nights we ended up shooting this whole scene. And originally this was a much more protracted, a much longer sequence. We probably cut it down by about half. There's a lot more business with him running and various things disappearing, but once we got in the edit, we just realized you know
He's great. in this.
kind of a short sweep. Yeah, I mean, that thing you were talking about of just without any words at all, just having to communicate. It's funny, this is a scene that when we first put it in, our editor, Bob Doucet, who's a fantastic editor, he said, I bet you're going to end up, I think this scene should go. I think you're going to end up cutting the scene.
Right.
Because well, first of all, because we had it in without all the effects, so it wasn't as
It's so
effective
hard
as it
to
was.
know when you're not looking at it finished.
Yeah.
But also, it is a little narrative cul-de-sac. It doesn't connect to anything else, really. It sets up this piece of information, and it's an effective scene. But those are my arms, by the way, in his pant legs. faking that.
But it's completely necessary, because if
I
you
think so.
don't,
Well, that's
if you
where we
haven't
ended up.
seen it, then where are the stakes for once it starts happening?
That's what we ended up coming out with. This was one of our more complicated effects shots in the whole movie, even though you wouldn't think so. This is actually like 3 shots stitched together. And by the end here, the whole street has been like digitally replaced, and his pant leg is actually digital.
Wow.
Wow.
But it took a lot of manipulating. And then this was actually,
How'd you do that?
That one shot from behind, that was another actor we brought in who didn't have arms, actually. And we just
Wow.
made up the back of his head with a wig to look like Frank. And he
Wow.
came up. And so it's a combination of low and high tech. Noah working his little gun spin in there anywhere
See,
again.
but it's just, he makes it look easy because he practiced so much. That
So
gun
hard.
is, I think, 7.5 pounds or something.
Yeah.
It's
Very
absurd.
difficult to spin it on your index finger.
It is
like that.
absolutely absurd how huge that gun is. And yeah, it just takes a lot of skill. Piper. This scene is interesting because I don't think this has ever happened before, where the scene as written, when we went into production, I still felt like it was a little off. So Joe, I don't know if you remember, but while we were in production, we took some time, and you and Piper came over.
I remember.
And we just worked through the scene and tried and did kind of and just kind of talked through it, and I ended up rewriting the scene and kind of finding what the heart of it was. And I feel like we really kind of found it and made it better. Starting the scene off with that watch, with the clock, was supposed to kind of mirror, Joe's pocket watch. And to me, there was a even more than the parallel between Piper and Emily's character. The real parallel was between Piper and Joe's character, and the notion that they're, that this is their job. It's a big part of the reason why the nudity in the scene was really important to me. The same way that we didn't pull that the violence is right there and in your face when he shoots the people. That it was very just plaintive that this is her job. This is what she's here to do. And the fact that Joe is asking for more than that is the big disconnect of the scene.
Right.
And I think Piper just plays it beautifully. And you're pretty good too.
Hey, thanks.
Hey.
I'm doing fine.
We had the camera up on its side for this shot, and I don't know if you remember, the mag didn't like it. The film mag started squealing.
Oh yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah.
Did you ADR it?
No, actually, we managed to get away with it. There might be one or two little things, but we didn't end up using much ADR in most of the movie. Actually, we ended up saving most of the production. Little insert of the clock. That and all the other second unit shots, basically any shot that's totally disconnected from the actors, most of those were done by our incredible second unit, shot by Jaron Prasant, who's a fantastic DP who Steve and I have known since college. He did a great job with that, and a lot of the cutaways and inserts, like that little shot of the silver going in. That's not shot on the main unit. This was your hand, though. I remember distinctly doing this.
A lot of the other hands, though, are not me.
It's true.
Oh, it's true.
At one point in Brick, Steve, our DP, we discovered was a great hand substitute for you. And not anymore because he's worked so much now. His hands are almost up.
You call me dainty?
Yeah. Joe, you haven't worked a day in your life.
Day in your life,
lily white hand.
He actually works for a living, so that took him out. And here we go with the man.
Can't wait.
Uh-huh.
Love that dude.
Mm-hmm. This,
Who?
yeah, exactly. I was about to go into a thing about the pocket watch, which is actually, I believe it's Turkish.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
It's like 100 years old or something,
distinct
right?
thing.
Gorgeous.
Yeah. It's
Did you get to
absolutely
keep it?
Beautiful.
No.
No.
No. This way that Bruce appears and the way that everyone appears in the movie, I remember that was actually something really difficult to communicate just because I wanted it to be absolutely nothing when they showed up. And I'll say this, for instance, is like all those little inserts and stuff. It's all pasted together from shooting over like a couple days. But yeah, the way that they instantly snap on was something that, because once effects guys look at that, and the instinct is to do something like a time warp effect or to do like a Stargate effect. And I figured the one thing I hadn't seen that I thought would be more cool is just completely unadorned. They're not there one moment, they're there the next.
Yeah.
You sure you don't want a little little space ripple?
Just a little flare.
You want
a little flare.
little puff of smoke?
Yeah.
We can do smoke.
This is in this sequence. There's some beautiful matte painting effects, digital matte paintings, which Atomic Fiction, it's a company based up in Northern California that did those.
What did you say? Matte painting effect?
Matte paintings, yeah. All the city stuff where it's big, vast landscapes, but it looks otherworldly, or the cities are burning or on fire. They're digital matte paintings. They're composites.
So cool.
And they used to. You see pictures of how they used to do glass matte paintings, where they would actually, somebody would actually paint it on glass, like the parts that were going to be changed, and they would sit in front of the camera and photograph the plate with it. It was such a incredible art form, which is now basically gone. Kid Blue comes in here with these two jokers. We said we should do a spin-off called Shorty and the Kid. The big guy would be named Shorty and they fight crimes. That handle on the door looks like a cross, which Bob Doucet, our editor, when we were bored and getting goofy late in the studio, would start looking for crosses in the background and say we had to do a whole thing about the crucifixion symbolism we've baked into it purposefully. So this thing here, we did this practically. A fantastic stuntman took a dive in there, and then Lex, the bravest stuntman in the world, put his hand up, and there's a steel rod that caught the trapdoor as it came down, but the trapdoor actually came straight down and slammed like resting on the guy's hand.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Scariest thing in the, like scarier than taking a jump off a building or whatever.
I had to slam it down on there.
Yeah.
Did he scream?
Terrifying.
I mean, did it break his hand?
No.
Nobody had, but
it,
he gestured with his hand as if
to make
it
it
hurt.
look, yeah.
Yeah.
And then we ended up having to do some digital stitching between a couple shots, but it's mainly practical. And this
My 30th birthday.
that was your 30th birthday. That's entirely practical. All we did was remove wires. We lowered Joe down, and he did the whole fall onto some pads, and we went down following him with the camera on the techno crane. So that shot was, besides wire removal, was entirely in camera.
If you guys are looking for things to do on your 30th birthday, consider jumping off backwards
Oh
3
my
stories
God.
of the building.
That's right. We
heard
brought
it
out
here.
a cake and sang to him when he was suspended up on the wires 30 feet in the air. It's hard to beat. It's pretty cool. That's a good one. So this sequence was the one that we worked with the most in the editing room. And this is because it took us a while to really figure out how to get the storytelling clear in it. It was a big sticking point. It's still one of the more confusing, tricky things that we do in the movie.
Not my hands.
But there you go. They looked a little beefy. They looked a little masculine.
I think they look feminine.
Yeah, well. So, what was I saying? Oh, so this sequence, originally it was, how dare you? Originally it was set in Paris. And originally the plan was, Joe wants to go to Paris. And so we were faced with the prospect of faking Paris in New Orleans. And our Chinese distributor approached us and said, hey, listen, if you're willing to set that sequence in Shanghai, we can make this a co-production and actually pay for you to come over to Shanghai. And so basically we got to shoot for real in Shanghai for 2 weeks.
Was that the shot that my parents were in?
Yes,
Yeah, my
right at the
parents
very
were in that
beginning.
shot,
If
yeah.
you pause it, that shot where first Joe goes over to see the city, if you pause it at the beginning, Dennis and Jane are in the background.
Parents came to China.
How was
so
that
great.
nightclub?
I was sick as a dog when we were shooting in that
right.
nightclub. It was actually a really cool nightclub, but it was a nightmare for me and Steve because we were both absolutely
no.
ill during it.
I remember you let me pick the music. You're like, put something on, and I.
Nobody was dancing.
Yeah.
They were just
I was like, okay,
staring
fine,
at us.
sorry, you
All
pick
right,
something.
it's okay. Put on some Skrillex. Damn it. Nah.
I gotta say that one with Bruce with the long hair, that's where he really looks most like you, I think. It's really cool.
Well, that was the concept of this was to bring them closer together, and then originally that was cut as a more elaborate thing where we actually did more intercutting between that push-up on Bruce and you shooting up and aging, and then there was a point where it switched over to him. But I think you get it from this. Summer, who is our Chinese actress here, was absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
She was fantastic. Yeah, and originally there was, and some of this will be in the deleted scenes, there was a lot more with Joe and Summer where there was a whole thing where she couldn't accept him because he was a murderer, and so he threw his guns away for her, and there was that fed into the whole thing, but it just, during the course of cutting it, it just slimmed down to the bare essentials.
You still get what you're saying, though, that
Yeah.
he does throw his guns
Well, that's
away.
what you realize. And that's part of the cutting process, I think, is realizing what the audience will leap to, what you need to connect the dots on, and what they'll make the leap to do. This is back in New Orleans. Anything that is, because Bruce didn't travel to China. Anything that has Bruce in it is actually set in. We shot New Orleans for China.
I remember that detail, the shot just a second ago of her hand on his foot. That was in the script. That's
In the
the
script.
level of detail that's in a Ryan Johnson
Yeah.
script.
That was a really specific thing. I had, for some reason,
But
just
it's
had
very
my head
real.
in it.
I gotta say that's
Well,
a
and then
very real thing.
we mirror it later with that shot of you with Sid's face.
Yeah.
Right.
That kind of casual thing. And here we're back to our power plant. And the time machine itself was the design of it. I wanted it to be really foreboding, but also really primitive looking.
Yeah.
And the design of it is, and also dangerous looking. The design of it is based on the gadget. It's based on the first test bomb that they set off at the Trinity test site. And
What's the Trinity test?
Trinity test site was it was the first test of an atomic bomb, out in the desert of it was New Mexico. And there was a video game, there was a computer game I was obsessed with when I was younger, called Trinity, which was a game that was this surrealistic, beautiful game by Brian Moriarty. It was kind of a surrealistic journey through the history of the atomic bomb, and it came with this comic book that had a picture of the device, and it looks like that, and that just always stuck in my head. And Bruce doing the
moral of that story is
doing the
don't
fighting.
mess with Bruce Willis.
no,
What is that amazing move where he drops to his back? Like I
all
love
of this,
that
he
move.
came up with all of this, man. This is
He
all
did?
him. Yeah. I mean, he worked with the fight coordinator, but really, Bruce just
Because
he
he's
knows
just
what
done a ton.
He
of
has.
it.
And he knew what he was doing. It was really cool to see.
Mm-hmm.
This is in camera all right here. We cranked the frame rate. We ramped the frame rate down so that it started jittering. And Bob Hall, our first AC, actually pulled the lens off the camera while he was shaking the lens in and seating back and forth.
Bob Hall is also Chris Nolan's focus puller. Pulled focus
Genius
on
guy.
Inception and Dark Knight Rises.
And this was an incredibly difficult show, focus-wise. We did a lot of stuff to put Bob in a really tight spot. We were shooting wide open, which means that the aperture of the camera is wide open and you're shooting in very low light. That also means that your focal plane, the amount of leeway you have where something is in or not in focus, is really, really small. And we were shooting close-up stuff really wide open. It's just very, very difficult to hit. And Bob is he's kind of the Yoda of camera assistants. And that's an intense job, especially when you're shooting film, because you have to hit it so exactly in terms of the focus.
Yeah.
A shot like this, when we're pushing in on Bruce, he's got to carry it with him. He's got to dial it exactly in, and you don't have a reference. It's not like you're looking through the eyepiece and you can see. You're just going based on distance. You're going based on the numbers on the dial and dialing it down 3 feet, 2 feet, and just a sense of it. And you don't know whether you hit it until a few days later when they get the film dailies back.
Right.
It's really an incredibly difficult, high-pressure job, and Bob Hall makes it look easy.
Yeah, the guys who are really good at it, it's like they're performers along with because they adjust that focus ring along with the performances, so they have to have a sense of timing along with the actors, the way the scene is paced.
When we were in China, we had another first AC who came out who's equally as good, and his name is John Connor, crazily enough.
Love it.
Terminator. Fucking Kid Blue. I think Bruce ad-libbed that line, actually. No, Bruce had ad-libbed. I ended up cutting it, but he ad-libbed, this motherfucker's still alive?
Yeah.
I thought it was really funny, but... This moment here where the thing explodes inward. It works and gets a good reaction. I like the dripping. I had always pictured more blood, actually. But...
Ryan.
I know.
So dark.
I know. All right, so this was a really long, complicated shot. This was like a whole night's shooting. So what's happening here is there's actually 2 stuntmen and Joe involved in this. There's a guy who we've now painted out who is doing the initial crawl. There's a guy who was hanging out down below who did the fall onto the hood. And then once we pan back up, Joe, you were hiding back behind the car and you switched places with him.
Yeah.
And so this was actually all done in one shot.
Wow.
And it was this elaborate thing. And then the guy falling at the end, we added in digitally afterwards.
How'd that feel being just yanked off
Yanked-
one-handed by Bruce Willis?
With broken glass all over the place.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, it's fine. It's great.
Right.
Shit. I can fix this.
I really love Kid Blue's character. That sounds, I don't know, as a filmmaker, I'm allowed to say that, but just what Noah did, the way that what Noah brought to that character, and specifically his dynamic with Jeff, is just one of, even now that I've seen the movie 3,000 times, it's one of my favorite things to watch in the movie.
That shot just there was, by the way, one of those examples of very difficult to get into focus.
Oh my God. Yeah. Just no play at all. You just gotta hit it. You gotta know that you hit it. All the helicopters were added in post. They were all digital, and I was very iffy about that, just because I'm kind of a curmudgeon when it comes to digitally created vehicles. And I remember I had seen on the Blade Runner DVD extras the optical comps of the flying cars before they added the flaring headlights in, and I was like, oh my God, without the headlights it looks like an optical. It looks terrible, and those headlights just cover all ills.
Right.
And so I had them just really go heavy on the flare that was coming down from all the vehicles to make them more just these points of light in the sky. These are my little cousins, actually. I solicited my family for pictures of babies to put on the map.
There's never a shortage of Johnson babies.
It's really true. Plastic on the books in the library was something Ed Varro just came up with. I thought it was a really cool idea. Yeah, that books are being phased out. That shot worked out nice. The scale of it. Yeah. So we had incredible greensmen on this movie, because when we were shooting, there was no sugar cane. Basically, it was dead, and so anything you see there is dead sugar cane that's been propped up and painted green.
Yeah,
and it's basically artificial. So and our guys just did an incredible job. Was
it that it died because of the weather, or was it
it's
just the
a
wrong
season.
time of year?
Yeah, it's the wrong time of the year. We were there the exact wrong time of the year. And here's the diner scene. So this was all said, including the escape. I think it was 3 days of shooting. We had, at various points, we had 2 cameras going for a lot of it. And our favorite statistic was, in the course of these 3 days, we shot more film than we did for the entirety of Brick. I think that's actually true. I forget what the footage count was, but...
Coffee?
Tracy Toms, who came in and did the part of Beatrix very, very graciously. She's a terrific actress.
She's terrific.
Yeah.
Between her and Bruce, I felt like I was in a Tarantino movie.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. Yeah, Tracy's just the best. This is also one of those scenes where, the little bit of business between the two of you here, when he says the thing about 3 letters and you say that would be better. That's one of the few ad-libs in the scene, actually. That always gets a laugh.
I love this profile because you can really see how masterful the prosthetic is, with the nose and the lips, and it's really cool.
Yeah. This is where it pays off. And for us, too, this was the first time that we had shot the 2 of them together. And so it was kind of a sigh of relief for everybody when we saw them lined up, and we're like, oh yeah, that really works. This scene is an example where we were talking about what to cut and what not to, and connecting the dots specifically with the time travel logic, because originally there was a whole section in this scene where it was kind of a gag that after, at some point, Bruce says, I don't want to be making diagrams with straws. At some point, he gets frustrated trying to explain it. He goes, hand me those straws, and he starts making a diagram. And he actually started explaining, not so much like a timeline, but more just kind of a visualization of how his head was becoming hazy. And it was nice, but it was one of those things where you figure out that you don't need it. You figure out the audience, not what the audience cares about or is
Right.
thinking about at that point, and you have to be brutal and cut anything that isn't just attached to the spine.
So do you know what's gonna happen? You done all this already? As me?
I don't want to talk about time travel shit.
That gets a big laugh.
Well, that's being able to just kind of dismiss it like that.
So smart. Though.
Well, the approach to time travel in general, and because the movie is really not about time travel, and so that was one of the big challenges in writing it, was figuring out how to get time travel to lay down so that the audience isn't having to process the rules of it the whole time.
Right.
Because the heart of the movie is really in the characters and largely in just like the back half with you and Sid, and so getting it to the point where it felt like it made sense, which it really doesn't. No time travel in any movie ever makes sense.
No.
It's complete balderdash, and it's just a matter of tricking the audience into believing that it makes sense. And so that was a big part of the challenge. And one of the pleasant surprises was how much of even the explanation we shot and put in there, we could end up cutting out during the course of the editing, realizing that the audience is making these jumps and is not confused, and sometimes more information just serves to make it more
Right.
confusing.
It's messy. All I know.
This was the first time Bruce really heard you do him,
It's true.
right?
Yeah, that's right.
He
How
was
did-
very nice. He was very happy.
Yeah, the way he reacted to that.
Pretty.
He's gonna save your life.
Yeah, there was originally a lot more in this scene. That little quiver, like that's not actually that's a hand double. That's not Bruce's hand.
Nervous to be Bruce's hand.
Well, it's tough actually and if you just rest your hand on a table and look at it, there's a little bit of quiver to it usually, and especially if you're being filmed. There's and I think he had some coffee in the morning or something. The guy who did it, but I actually and so. There's a trick you can do, especially for something like that, where you slow it way down. And we did that a few times to steady a really tight shot of a hand.
Wow.
You slow it down, 300%, and that can steady it. And Bob was going to put that on there, and I actually asked him not to because I like that in that moment,
Yeah, I
that
think
little
it's
quiver.
nice.
And it's something that's hard to fake. That's something where when you see it,
Right.
someone trying to fake their hand quivering, it's a tough thing to do.
I can do it.
I know you can. For lesser actors, it's difficult to fake.
You ask me to fake anything, I'll do it for you.
This was another big editorial decision was
You think maybe I'm clear of the past.
because originally a lot of this stuff was Summer that happens in this little flashback here was placed in the main montage. And holding that off for this, because originally we revealed, right now as it is in the big China montage, this we cut out basically once he goes down on his knees and you see the house burning, and we hold off, we hold off the reveal that she comes in and gets shot until this. That wasn't the way it originally was. Originally, we saw that in the original montage in the diner scene, just kind of played more straight. And during the course of cutting, it was something that came up that was, I think it might have been Jim Stern, one of our producers, who had the idea and threw it out there. And it played so well holding that piece out. And it also helps to break up the diner scene, to break the diner scene in half so that you have this kind of burst of visual information in the middle of a scene. Summer is I love her
So
performance
wonderful.
here. Yeah, both of them here, which she conveys just with her eyes.
Have you heard of the Rainmaker?
Yeah, Seth said that night.
Neither of you eat the food.
No,
Smart.
yeah.
Because after take 20,
After take 20.
you're like, "Ugh."
Under those lights.
I made that mistake in my first film.
Oh,
They
yeah?
handed me a fried breakfast.
Oh, no.
Good British fry up.
And then you had to
I felt so ill at the end of the
wolf down those bangers.
day. Yeah.
Oh, boy. You can see Joe's eyes really well in this close-up, and it's because So Joe, you have brown eyes,
I have brown eyes and I'm wearing
blue
contact
contacts, which
lenses.
is the toughest thing to do. It requires the most uncomfortable lenses to turn brown eyes blue.
Yeah.
Because they're so thick. Or...
Well, because you're turning, it's easier if you have blue eyes and you want to turn them brown. It's just a matter of laying brown on top of them. Basically, this is like a painted blue ring on it. But we noticed a weird thing, which is the lenses, the color of them would fade over the course of like a few weeks. And then they would pop new ones in and they would be vibrant, bright blue.
Yeah.
So there actually is some, I think it's realistic because people's eyes look different under different lighting
Sure.
conditions, but there is like...
Especially blue eyes, they change a lot.
Yeah,
It's here, now, in this county. And I'm gonna use this to find
And it was amazing how, even with all the face stuff, I feel like the eyes were still maybe the biggest difference, the biggest kind of...
Absolutely. When
you pop
'cause
those in.
I would do the whole makeup and not the eyes. 'Cause the eyes you do last.
Yeah.
And it would feel incomplete until you put the eyes in. And then I'd look in the mirror and go, oh, there it is.
Right.
Inside your brain should just swallow up all the memories, right? She'll be gone.
This little bit here, and this ties the whole thing in together. And this specific thing was, again, this was maybe the one other thing in the movie that we all came up with together.
That's right, when we were rehearsing.
Yeah, when we were rehearsing, this whole bit about just show me the thing and I'll do it. And, this is so stupid, and that turn. And
He really hit me there. That's one of my prouder
really
moments.
smacked-
I got hit in
really
the head.
smacked you.
Yeah.
hit me in the neck.
At least one of the takes.
Yeah.
There was definite impact between
boy.
Bruce Willis's fist and my head.
I think if you don't get hit for real in one of our movies, we're doing something wrong.
That's right, I got hit for real and break.
Yeah, Noah tagged you.
The other Noah.
The other Noah. That shot right there, that little twisting shot, we did using shuffleboard wax. We put this super slippery wax on the ground and just slid the camera over. Steve had this
Wow.
trick, which we actually figured out from Brick. We first did it in Brick.
What the hell is everybody doing?
The music over this scene was I think the very last thing we dropped in. For the longest time, I resisted having any music over this scene, but what Nathan did for it worked really well.
That really happened.
And when that happened, I think everyone was like, "Oh, we have to do it over." And I was like, "What? That's great." I like Kid Blue's limp also. Noah did this ridiculous limp. It's kind of like the sad villain. For the slap bike too, we similar to the way that I wanted all the floating things on strings. I didn't want to have to, although this is obviously a comp. I didn't want to. one of the Oh well.
Ryan.
I can't help you, James. When the slap bike is actually flying, I didn't want to have to just comp it in, and so we actually built a truck with an arm coming off the side, holding the slap bike up, and drove with it. Emily Blunt.
Oh, she's arrived.
That chopping. Why don't you talk a little bit about that wood chopping?
Well, I had never chopped wood in my life before this film, and I just didn't want to chop like a sissy. So I had the props guy drop off some logs in my back garden in LA, and I practiced for about a month beforehand. But that was the easier chopping wood scene. There's a scene later on that Joe and I have where I chop wood for about 6 hours straight. I could hardly brush my teeth that night, you know?
You were it really messed up your shoulder for the rest of the shoot. I felt so bad. It was
It's all part of it, Ryan.
it's all part of it, to the point where even holding the gun up was
Yeah, I
you
think
were
that
in
was the
pain.
thing that did it, actually, holding up that rifle.
Yeah. This I've fought, not really other people, but I fought myself to keep this in up till the very end. I just love the way that you play this long moment. And it was something that obviously could go, and you know, it's something that is just like this long, strange moment that plays. I really love taking this long a breath, first of all, at this point in the story.
I do too, yeah.
And just letting you absorb this new person who are, especially because we're meeting you so late in the story, having this long moment to stare just at this new person.
And
that
it's
we're
so
meeting.
different. The whole world is so different from what we've just seen. So.
Yeah. I felt like it was really important.
And you do learn a lot about her just
in that
even though
moment.
she's not saying anything.
Yeah, it was really beautiful. This house is a house that we found in Thibodaux, Louisiana, which is an hour or so outside of New Orleans. And we did a lot of scouting to find this house because this is kind of like a traditional Midwestern farmhouse, and those just don't exist in Louisiana, in and around New Orleans. This was kind of an anomaly. It's kind of miraculous we were able to, our location guys found it. And it's basically as is. We built the staircase in it, and we did some adjusting to the walls, and we extended the porch. But other than that, the house is as it was.
It's just you telling me to go Full Metal Jacket.
That's right.
Do you remember?
I think I told you to go Sam Jackson.
You did.
I think I said go full Sam Jackson on this.
It's like my agent's favorite line.
You should make that your ringtone.
My agent now calls me saying, if you don't ring me back, I'll cut you the fucking heart.
So yeah, all this Kane is on life support. Anytime you see Kane in the movie, it's basically our incredible greensman, Hap. Remember Hap?
Hap was the one to give me
Yeah.
amazing
Massages
as well. He had all these crazy oils, and it was.
I have
was
to point
intensely
out
jealous.
the way the frame warped like
you
that
didn't have
right
the magic
then.
hands.
I have to point out real quick, that was Bob Hall again. The way that frame warped just then,
Right.
because we were shooting anamorphic, which is not a spherical lens. It's like a compressed lens. When you do a focus rack, anytime you can see the whole frame breathes. And so I told Bob, just rack it back and forth real quick, and let's see what we get. And he was having so much fun jiggling it. Just wah, 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 wah. So that's an artifact of the type of lens we were using.
And their work is always invisible, the focus
It's
pullers.
true.
So to like actually step out into the foreground is something you can see.
Yeah.
This is a really beautiful scene between these. I really love the work Noah does here. So sad. And there was originally and this will again it'll be in the deleted scenes, but there's a whole second half to this scene where after he hits him with the hammer, the guys drag him out back, and there's kind of a Miller's Crossing scene where they're dragging him and he's begging the guy, and the guy is going to shoot him. And at the last minute, Kid Blue pulls a gun out of his an ankle holster that he has and gets the guy first, and he runs off into the rain. And is a really nice scene, and Noah did a great job. Both Noah and the stuntman did a terrific job with it. But we realized that the scene dramatically was just... It was over at this point. And we realized that the real meat of the scene was right there, and everything else after that, as cool as it was kind of an epilogue.
So Noah had to be face down in a dirty alley in New Orleans. For,
Well, more than that, this huge emotional scene he did where he's begging for his life. That was the toughest thing I had to... Because there were a lot of Kid Blue scenes that were cut, which we're going to hopefully have Noah on in the commentary to talk about in the deleted scenes. And again, they're some of my favorite individual scenes in the movie. But a lot of them, because of the nature of that character, they were connective tissue. They were connecting the dots from A to B to C to D. And for a lot of them, we just realized we didn't need them. The stuff Steve Yedlin did out here with those distant lights, and then with this and letting it go that dark.
Yeah,
Steve just
it's
did
so cool.
did a great job with exterior night, which is always exterior night's always a tricky thing to deal with. And here is Ponce, who played. He was so cool, man. You fall down a lot in this movie.
She's a chick, you know?
For some reason, I remember.
True, actually. I
You
never
do. You
thought of
fall
that.
down a lot. You're
She's
such
always-
a klutz. Such a klutz. Ah. This is really well done, this puking. That is not easy, actually.
I'm an expert on vomit takes.
Yeah.
I think I actually on the day went, made me gag.
This scene was a pain in the ass. This seems like a really simple scene, but originally there was a lot more exposition in it, and it just was not working. It felt like, why is she saying all this, explaining all this stuff to him? And I remember we worked with it on the day and simplified it, and this just works so much better. Now here comes the real star of the movie.
Little man.
What was the story? Do you remember the Pierce story? It's a great way to introduce Pierce.
Oh.
Who was he talking to? He talking to you?
His mom told me a story.
Yeah.
About I forget exactly.
I remember it. It was okay. So he was seeing they were next to you, and it was something like it was something like you were doing some work or something like that, and she said to him, "Now you see, Pierce, even though Joe's the star of the movie, he's still working really hard and doing all this stuff. So that's something for you to look at." And Pierce looked at her really seriously. His face just fell, and he said, "Joe's the star of the movie?"
Yeah. I remember him in the auditioning process, which was the scary part of casting this kid.
Yeah.
Because you needed that kid who was just spooky good and had something kind of heightened about him, and that's hard to find in a 4 or 5-year-old,
Jaron Prasant did this shot also. This is
Very
a beautiful, cool shot. Yeah, Pierce just...
I remember you asking Pierce to do something in his audition, and he said, "I'll only do it if you give me the movie."
Yeah.
And that's almost why he got...
That was pretty good.
That's kind of why he got the part.
That was really good. Well, at some point in the audition, we had auditioned the poor kid 6 times. So we kept bringing him back and back and back and back. And at some point, he was like, "I kind of don't want to do this anymore."
I think you were emotionally asking him to go to a really deep place, and he was like, "Nah."
Seriously,
he said, "I'll do it."
I'll do it when the cameras are here.
Yeah.
He says, "I'm not going to waste it."
Yeah. I love
Bruce-
that kid.
Yeah.
God.
Bruce does a really great job in this scene. This scene, actually, largely just because of what Bruce brought to it, it ended up playing really well in terms of communicating the emotion of losing the wife, so much so that there was a later scene that there was originally in the film where after he comes back and finds it's Piper's daughter, he's going back and forth again and having an internal moment of whether or not to throw away his guns and give it all up. And that scene felt redundant because this one played so well. It's one of those things that you just can only discover in the editing.
I like the blanket.
I like it too. Science fiction.
And we took the scene out with the car as well. Remember where I
Yeah,
had the...
yeah, that's going to be on the lead. Yeah, originally there's a whole thing where, again, it's connective tissue. It's stuff. There's a really nice scene, but when it's gone, you realize, yes, it makes sense just to hop. Originally, you saw Sarah actually dump him by the side of the road, and then have a change of heart and bring him back into the barn and chain him up to the thing.
Right.
I'm about to finish cleaning.
Put it down.
I find that really funny. I never get to laugh either. I think
Slow by the end of the week.
Uh, this barn was another thing
That was
we
real,
built.
by the way. You tossed me those keys, and I couldn't move my wrist because I was handcuffed to the cot, and you managed to toss them just so that I didn't even have to move my hand and I could catch them. That's
Acting.
a well-tossed key.
Acting. Ed Verro built this barn. That was the other big build thing that we did out here.
Get off my farm.
So this is the
I
thing where
loved that farm.
your shoulder was totally thrashed, and this is where you had to hold that gun up. And I think in this shot, there's actually one of the grips is holding the end of the gun. Just
I think after about
after a few takes.
a few takes.
Yeah.
It's not the gun I'm not afraid of. What are you gonna do? Shoot in the air? Try to scare me? Go ahead. You wouldn't let me die. You're not gonna kill me.
Oh, so now I saved your life? That makes me weak?
And this is also the first time we kind of get any of the
I need to be on your property.
back and forth with you two.
Protect it all. I'm gonna stay in the fields.
And this little kind of Looney
I
Tunes.
need you to do, then you'll never have to deal with me again.
We shut when we first moved out to the farm here. It was I forget, our whole schedule was 50 days. I think it was it, how many days, Rom, I'm looking at Rom out in the studio. Was it 30 days in the city and then 20
I know I
vaguely?
worked 3 weeks, so I think
Yeah,
something like that.
something like that. But when we first moved out there, the first thing that we shot actually was the whole scene in the field, the whole end showdown.
Yeah, you're right.
Because we had Bruce for that overlapping week, and so we shot him out in the field. And we got so lucky because there was no rain. It didn't rain a single day. It was blue skies that first week.
Right.
And we only realized when a week later we did have our first rain day how lucky we got, because when it rains here, because of the water table, there's just nowhere for the water to go. And you're basically sitting in a mud lake, and the water has nowhere to drain to. So if it had rained at any point in that first week, we would have just been totally screwed, continuity-wise.
We lucked out.
Yeah.
I can't go back to the city because Abe, the boss,
That
searching for me 24/7 till they
that's
find
back in New Orleans, the place that Bruce is, and that kind of overpass, which is kind of the visual thing we decided to have tie that whole sequence together.
Yeah.
Is
That's what you know about loopers?
just a beautiful big foreboding thing.
To murder my son because he thinks he might be this rainmaker.
Remember, we tweaked in here also like the information that was being given.
Right.
Another point where I was figuring out exactly what to say and what not to. And there was another scene, which I don't think we were including in the deleted scenes, where Bruce actually came up to Camden, who's right here, the actor who plays Daniel, in the park, and had a conversation with him just to scope him out and make sure he was the real kid. And it was this really creepy conversation between the two of them. It was really, really cool, actually. And but it was one of those things where it just wasn't the heart of the scene. So this is the moment that, from the very first moment that I'd finished the script and showed it to my intrepid producer, Ron Bergman, and we started to go out there, this was the moment coming up here that was obviously the biggest sticking point, to the point where I feel like Ron might have been humoring me a little when he let me leave it in. I feel like Ron in the back of his head was like, yeah, we'll end up cutting that out at some point. But yes, it's okay. Leave it in. It'll be okay. We'll figure out the way to make it work. And he always referred to it as shooting the baby.
Shooting
I'm like,
the baby.
he's not a baby. He's a toddler. What are you talking about? He's not. But it's at
So
first,
good.
But I mean, at first, it's a testament to Rom and to Jim Stern and the whole team at Endgame that they trusted that this moment would work in the context of the movie as a whole. And we actually, once we actually shot it and got it in there, and especially once we got this scene after
Bruce's
it,
reaction to it is
Yeah.
so heartbreaking.
I think that's really what earns it and what saves it, is what Bruce brings to this scene right
Yeah,
here.
his sort of sickness and self-loathing is what
Yeah,
justifies it.
yeah. And so once we actually got it in the movie, we never had any. Surprisingly, we didn't really have any audience kickback. I mean, it's not something that's good to watch or feels good, and people would say that makes me really uncomfortable. But they would also say, but in the context of the story, it's really, it's necessary. So
I love the music here as well. It's
Nathan's,
so
yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. So much of the score is
Gives me
rhythmic.
goosebumps.
And,
Look at that.
Yeah. Oh, look at that. She does have goosebumps. That's true. Yeah, Bruce just really took it all the way here. Is really amazing to watch. His right ear also, I don't know if you really even, you do notice it during the course of it, but that appears the instant after Joe's ear gets shot in the apartment, and poor Bruce had to, can you believe poor Bruce had to have that thing on there the whole time,
that's
Joe?
tough,
It's
right?
really tough for him. It took like 15 minutes to put that on every time.
morning.
I don't know how he stood it.
I'm asking, can I trust you?
I don't care if you trust me.
It was your decision to go blonde for
It
this
was.
one, which is
I remember
awesome.
I called you. I said, I don't know why I'm feeling that she's outside all the time and
yeah,
bleached out and hot and sunny, and
yeah,
so I just felt that it would be good. And I asked you, I said, how did you picture her when you wrote it? And you said, actually, fair.
Yeah.
Fair-haired.
Yeah. It made a lot of sense. And I don't think I've... Have you been blonde in another movie? With her? Yeah, it's such a different look, and it's so...
Yeah, you look
So
really
good.
different now just looking back and forth between you and you on the
And
screen.
this is still pretty light right
Yeah,
now,
it
but
is,
it's not
yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that and the tan. Just
Yeah.
knocking all the blue blood out of you.
Pale Brit.
Pale Brits. You're limey.
The pasty limey.
say limey. Cool. Oh, I mean, start doing our bad English impression,
God,
our bad
please
British
don't stop.
accents. You love it so much. Know how much you love it.
Mary Poppins,
Oh,
stepping
God. That's all Joe says.
Well, that's
I love some cheese on toast. I love a delicious strawberry whipple. I love the meat pasty.
Actually, that's not bad.
That's not
you
bad,
don't
is it?
sound like me, but you sound Irish.
I watch a
but-
lot of Mike Lee movies.
There you go. There you go.
That's really the trick. I love the lighting in this scene. Steve had a really specific idea to have this kind of dim, warm lighting here, so that when we see this, which is one of the more
so
prettiest shots in the
yeah.
movie with the sunlight, it makes sense logically that the sun is setting behind the house. And Steve was really excited about that lighting idea.
Well, we're gonna see what he is. All right, but I need you to stick with me. Good boy.
He's so cute. Oh my God, in those overalls, I couldn't even handle it.
That's a very
He was
pretty
so
shot.
cute.
This was I remember we we had to bring a kid in to do the hand over Bruce's mouth right here. And he was just an extra who we brought in. And I remember he was terrified, understandably so, because this location looks like this. It's in that power plant. It's a dark, scary location, and we brought him in, it was like nighttime, I think, and we bring him up to Bruce Willis, who's and he had to put his hand in there, and I think the kid was just
Scared.
really, really scared.
This is one of Pierce's great scenes.
Yeah, he really, and he's doing so much business here also. So Pierce, I mean, the way, and you guys can talk to, I mean, the way that Pierce did this performance, I mean, he would come in and he would do the whole scene front to back, a long dialogue scene like this, and just nail it. It wasn't like taking it in chunks. It wasn't taking it line by line.
Yeah, he truly understood. I think the difference between him and a lot of child actors is that he truly understood he was playing a character.
right.
Like, he understood the distinction between his life and this kid's life. And I think a lot of credit should be given to his mom, who's so fantastic with him and would really explain emotionally where he was at in the scenes.
Absolutely.
I think that, and then you would go in and speak to him like an adult and speak to him in an emotional sense. Because rather than saying, "Hey, Pierce, you should be scared here," you're explaining why it's so frightening, and he responded better to that.
I remember at some point, I think it was when we were auditioning, I didn't know him yet, and so I did some horrible directing. I was a beat like that where I said to him, "Okay, and so here you have to act scared." It was terrible directing that a real actor would just throw you out of the room for. And he looked at me and he goes, "I don't know how to do that." I was like, "Oh man, wow, he's this kid is for real." But it's something that you said to me a long time ago. When we had talked actually a long time ago, just about your experience acting as a kid, and it always stuck with me. Just kids can act.
Absolutely. They can be the very best because they're closest to that uninhibited
Imagination.
playtime. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was acting when I was 6 years old, which is a year I started when I was 6, and Pierce is 5 when we
Pierce
were
was
doing
5.
this.
Yeah, shit.
But it certainly brought a lot back for me
Yeah.
working with him so closely.
Huh. This truck was not supposed to do this. It was supposed to keep going, but it T-boned and we broke that truck. We broke the axle on it.
Oh boy.
And luckily the cameras on a remote head, no one would have gotten hurt if it blasted through, but that wasn't supposed to happen. That's a map. That's an example of a map painting. All that
Right.
stuff in the background.
Very
This is
cool.
real. I mean, this we were actually up 10 stories or whatever in this burnout building to shoot this. But we did little adjustments to everything. Here's the scene that killed your shoulder.
This was it. This was the one.
Listen, I found a.
Yeah, that's not easy. That's a lot of.
The wood was all wet as well. I think it had rained the night before or something, so it was. I think that's why it kept sticking. Or it's just my bad shopping skills.
No, I don't think so.
When?
The booty call frog.
Yeah, exactly. Don't give it away.
Spoiler.
Spoiler.
I hope they've seen the movie already if they're watching the I hope this is
That's
not the
true.
first time anyone's watching the movie.
That would
So
be
shame on you.
really shameful.
Shame on you. Yeah, and now in watching it, when we were editing it, knowing that your shoulder was was like getting more and more hurt after every take. Watching the edit in the editing room, I would just be cringing and like, oh, what did I do?
When I was 22.
And then this take, I remember so well. This being one of those
This
things
was it. Yeah.
on
just
set where we both
hit.
really felt it. Yeah,
Sister.
and that doesn't always happen. Sometimes you're really surprised when you get in the edit room. It's not the take that you thought it would be, and
This one felt weird.
this was it. Yeah, yeah. I think you just got so aggressive with the chopping. You focused all that energy into the chopping.
How'd she get killed?
Jesus Christ.
He remembers it. You gotta talk to him about
I
it.
told you one thing.
There was also originally I honestly can't remember what it was. There was more complicated business in terms of the sister. Oh, originally there was a mom.
There was a mom, yeah, and we just simplified it. I think it did complicate it.
We did some ADR, yeah, to take out the fact that there was a mom, so it was
I
just the
you
sister.
really did nearly get hit when I swung that axe. You were very brave. And I was like, promise me you'll move out of the way.
Don't worry about it.
It's all right, look at
Smack.
You'll just swing that axe. I'll be all right.
little lady. It'll be all right.
You'll be all right, love. Don't you worry.
Swing the axe, Mrs. Governor. Let's see if it goes back to the wide. We planted
32 there. I know you know this one.
the only hats in the movie are the Rain Man's guy, and you see that little action figure lying on the background. You can see it also later when you come back to. We basically planted little toys that were like basically the Rainmaker's men, the action figures of it.
8, 16,
I love
His
the
moody
scene
little
between
face.
the two of you. Yeah.
2.
Are you telling me you want alone time?
Mm-hmm. And he
Then why don't
knows
you
it.
put that where it belongs?
The other thing with Pierce, he would turn it on and
His
off.
eyes. I know.
Alone time.
He's protecting
But in between takes, he was 5 years old. It wasn't
Yeah.
like he was an adult in a kid's body. He
And
was a 5-year-old.
He'd finish his cover and just be like, can I go now?
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
no, you can't.
Yeah, you would get like 3 or 4 takes, and then he would start to get antsy because
Yeah.
he's
He's
getting
5.
bored. He's like, I did it right. What are you talking about?
So calm down.
I hate you, Mom! Lie to me,
I'm like, look at this kid. I
I
mean,
know.
it's just so hard to get. That's just so amazing, you know?
This was the first like dialogue scene we shot with him, and after the first take, it was another one of those things where I remember really distinctly looking around at the rest of the crew, and just everyone, just their jaws were dropped a little
People
bit.
were just
Yeah.
stunned by him.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
Kind of fun just to shout all day if you're 5 years old. Never get to do that.
You were so good with him too. He really bonded with you immediately.
love
A
him.
big crush on you, I think. And you were so wonderful with him, and
My
just
favorite
spent
day.
so much energy.
Oh yeah, I tried to hang out with him all the time. And
Yeah.
My favorite day was having lunch with him one day. And he was sitting on my knee and he kept trying to pull my top down. And I kept going, Pierce, come on, don't. And his mum was like, Pierce, that is so rude. Stop it like that. And eventually I went, why are you trying to undress me? And he went, because I just want to see him. He was just so frank about it.
From the mouth of
I
babes.
remember he didn't like this thing because he didn't want me holding him like a baby.
Oh,
And he felt embarrassed. He was
that's
like, you're
right.
holding me like a girl. He was embarrassed.
Oh, my God.
He's so cute.
Yeah, he's pretty adorable. In a devil type way. Another matte painting example, all the graffiti on the buildings here, and also obviously all that junk on top of that building and the blimp in the air. We added in
So cool.
after the fact. Yeah, just
Little
terrific.
things like that, just
just terrific effects work.
I think those are the ones, the digital effects that work best are the ones that are well placed amongst real things.
Absolutely.
Right.
That blend
Yeah.
into the real thing.
Yeah, if you can do the right combination. That's why, I mean, you look at Guillermo del Toro's Monsters. I think that's
Right.
why they're largely so successful, is because
Right.
they're not cartoons. They're practical things that are really intelligently, really
Right.
smartly accentuated with digital effects.
Did
Yeah.
he do Pan's Labyrinth?
Yeah,
God,
yeah.
that was amazing.
Incredible. Even like the Hellboy movies, it's just so well done.
That's how Nolan likes to do effects too. is
Yeah,
he makes
exactly.
something real, and then, if he needs to beef it up or whatever digitally,
Yeah.
you can hide the
Yeah,
the digital stuff.
it's the way to do it, I think.
Garrett.
Garrett is one of those guys who is just one of the best actors out
Truly.
there.
Yeah.
And he's I knew him from Deadwood. I knew him from which on Deadwood he was so good that his character died, and they brought him back the next season just playing another character.
How can I help you?
In the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford, which is just an incredible movie. He was fantastic, and he had this incredible scene with Pitt. And
What's this about? He's so creepy in this scene.
he hit
So
that
kind of intimidating,
perfect
yeah.
balance of doing so
Little.
much
yeah.
with so little.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I find him really fun. I remember he kept cracking you up
Oh
on
God,
set.
he was killing me. I couldn't even look at him after a while. He's a really funny dude.
Yeah.
Really funny.
This ticking off the list business is gonna require me coming in.
He makes me laugh even looking at him now. No, it was when he's drinking that glass of water. That was like, we got one straight
that's
take
right.
out of him.
That poor guy. Yeah, for that scene in the kitchen, he just had to drink glass after glass of water. That shot of you right there is a quick camera aside, because we were shooting anamorphic, which is a really specific type of format. One thing I found that you could do is put a wide lens on the camera and do these really tight close-ups. With that one of Emily was an example. The one, Joe, of you in the scene with Jeff was another example. And usually when you put a wide lens in an actor's face, you get a ton of distortion, and it ends up looking very just warped, which can be cool, but it's a really distinct effect. With anamorphic lenses, just because of the way the format is, you can really get away with it, and it doesn't feel super distorted. And I just kind of one of those pleasant things you just kind of discover, and really ended up enjoying it.
10.
Yeah, this beat with the water, it wasn't in the script. It was something just came up with on the day of shooting.
I don't
and
know why the sound in the silent room of someone drinking water always makes me laugh.
Yeah. There's something about that moment that, again, it's something we could have easily cut out, but it's funny, but there's also something really disquieting about it. There's something like,
Well, it's intimidating how at ease he is.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
much he makes himself
Yeah.
at home.
yeah, exactly.
So, the house.
It's a really subtle effect with the phones here. This is some nice subtle effects work. We did design these phones, and the idea is they're these flexible things you unfold, and I like the fact that even with that, he can't get reception.
There you go.
I think I had him throw out the ADR line, fucking AT&T at some point. We didn't use it.
You said the boy's in the city with his father. When are they getting back?
Couldn't tell you.
I wish I could remember what I told Pierce to get him to make the face he's about to make.
How he did this.
He's. You want me to shoot this guy? You want me to shoot this guy? I don't know how he suddenly turned into a 45-year-old man
Hey, you want me
for
to
that
do it?
expression. Yeah,
Okay.
he looks so self-satisfied.
Is this man dangerous?
He shoots men down for a living. He's a stone cold killer. My boss has half the city looking for him. Half the city and me, so.
So it was fun shooting this. It's always fun when you do a shot where the dramatic content of it plays out entirely and it times out just right. I forget if we had somebody cueing Garrett. Also, I love what Steve did here. This is one of my favorite environments. This set right here, shot from this angle, just because of that haze that comes in from the windows, it just looks so beautiful. So originally, right here, when they went in here, and we have this in the deleted scenes, the door creaked and Garrett appeared back there, and you and Garrett go down, and he like does this speech to you about how, you know, if he gets killed, they're gonna be here within 15 minutes. So they get down in the basement and have this standoff.
That wasn't the man.
It's funny that I know that guy, though.
This scene, I had no idea whether we got this scene or not. And it's a beautiful, beautiful scene. You guys both do just terrific work in it. But I felt like a little bit like I was, because we basically built a sweat box. Like it was
so hot that day.
Right.
It was so hot out there, and this is above ground. This isn't dug into the ground. This is a standing set right outside the farmhouse where it's just a box with that sod kind of on top of it, and it's all darked out. And I couldn't be in there with you guys. I was out by the monitor, and it was this enclosed space, and I couldn't really see because it was so dark, and I had set the shot, and not a lot was happening on the camera, but I was just kind of listening on my headphones outside. And I mean, it all sounded good, but we just did a bunch of them until I felt like we kind of had it. But until we cut the scene together, I didn't really realize how good it was going to feel, this exchange. And you're doing great work. And Pierce, the way that he's listening here, the fact that he's really listening, that's more than anything. I mean, that's just great acting. That's more difficult than anything else.
He's really connected with it.
Yeah. That's
I'm not gonna let Sarah get killed.
to me. That specifically in this scene is kind of the most amazing thing to see a 5-year-old doing.
I think we're clear.
And then this, again, we didn't have a hole dug. This is pasted together from, this is kind of a standing set. And you're up like 8 feet in the air there. And we cut it together with just this. That's why I love commentaries. You get to just ruin the magic of the movie.
Ruin everything.
Talk in your ear while you're watching a movie and ruin it all. This cue from Nathan, I remember up to the very final mix, we pulled it back and pulled it back and pulled it back. We kept peeling off elements from it because it was feeling too emotionally big.
This whole block, and a couple of blocks over.
Because really, it's the first moment of sort of acceptance between Sarah and Joe.
Yeah. Mark Johnson, who has a graphic house called The Maid Shop that Joe does a lot of work with Hit Record, did all the graphics for the phones and for the screens and for everything. A really good job. Frog booty call.
Frog booty call.
Ribbit.
I remember you were so embarrassed giving me that note. My hand going up my thigh. You were like, could you maybe?
If you feel like it. I mean, if it's okay. If it's not, you can call John first if you need to, just to make sure it's cool. I just don't want to. Yeah.
I don't want to be inappropriate.
Yeah. And ribbit. It's funny. The fact that you guys do it in the scene. It's funny because I don't know. We started showing the movie to audiences. I think what surprised me is how much people thought that we were reaching for a love story with it. And to me, I don't know, which I guess makes sense, but to me, at the end of the day, the point here isn't that they've formed this incredible connection and they're finally coming together. I don't think that, it's not about that at all, really. I mean, there's like a form of trust there that's kind of formed, but the connection with her not having had a cigarette in a long time is almost the bigger part of it. And the physical part of it is less about, it's not about love, it's about having, just somebody
Someone's there. Well, they've been so isolated, but with her especially, she is so isolated.
And I think that, because also your mind, I think, automatically reaches for some notion that it's a love story between the two of them that also motivates Joe's action at the end. And I feel like adding the voiceover at the end about the circle and about Sid maybe helps clear that up a little, because in my head it wasn't that he fell in love with this woman and this boy and that's what kind of drew him to it. It was much more about, you know, I don't want to get too much into it, but it's much more about what he sees in the boy and about what he sees in the woman. It's less about a love story. That lighter was on the string, and I don't know if you remember. You remember this? Yeah. It was our FX guy was just up on a stool with a fishing pole, swinging it back and forth, and it looked so ridiculous. I think at some point you were like, "Is this seriously what we're doing?" And we were just like, "This isn't going to work. We're going to end up replacing it with a cartoon lighter." It totally, yeah. Even before we painted the string out, it was amazing how well it worked.
I remember this is the most your prosthetics suffered in that makeout scene.
That's right.
Your makeup artist Jamie was having a heart attack.
Not built for kissing.
And he was like, "Do you mind like going a little gentler?" And you were like, "No, sorry,
not gonna happen."
Yeah, your nose started to fall off, didn't it?
Yeah, we had to do a bit like a half-hour retouch between take 1 and take 2. Or
yeah.
You kissed his nose off.
I did.
Good God.
I certainly did.
This is a really, really beautiful performance, Emily. And this was something that, in the edit, I was really protective of, because it is
one of those things that could go.
One of those things that could really easily go. And that's at various points there is pressure to have it go just because it's this lull in the action. But to me, this is such an important moment, and it's just so beautifully performed.
But I think it also fuels the reason why Joe
I think it's essential.
Makes the sacrifice.
The ending doesn't make sense without this.
That's what I felt. I felt like it really was necessary to kind of for the fabric of the whole thing. And it's just so beautiful. And you with the cigarettes, and Emily had to smoke like 30 cigarettes during the course of shooting all this, and you were so sick of them by the end of it.
Oh,
and
God.
The very last shot we did after you were sick to death and your mouth felt like an ashtray was the first shot in this scene where you're supposed to be taking that ecstasy drag of that cigarette. Like the best thing in the world.
Yeah, and you kept saying, "I'm so sorry, but you gotta look like you're enjoying it."
Yeah. I felt so bad.
I think I had 3 showers that night.
Oh, God.
It's like I reeked.
She just,
so bad.
Did you swallow shampoo? You just wash your things, gargle? Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, God. The way the smoke's coming up in front of your face, that's a Steve Yedlin special.
There you go.
He's gonna be safe.
Shot this. Did we shoot it in the evening?
I can't remember if this is day for night or not. I can't remember. It's weird because you're in the middle of it. The windows are blacked out, and so you kind of, it's hard for me to remember when it was. Might have been day for night. It might have been in the nighttime.
This sequence coming up is so beautiful.
And this was really adjusted in editing. There's another one where I don't know if you guys remember how it was originally scripted. Originally, straight from the end of the previous scene, we cut to Bruce smashing in the door of Piper's place. And then we intercut this extended dialogue scene that Bruce and Piper had, where he's it's not really a dialogue scene, it's Bruce giving a monologue, which he gave beautifully. It's a really gorgeous monologue where he's talking about why he has to do this, and he has to make her understand, and she just has no idea what's going on. She's terrified, just sitting there. And but there was a lot of dialogue, and we originally intercut that with this. And we discovered at some point it was a lot more effective to just the talking was just not necessary there as good as it was, and so we held it off until this moment here. So the way we did this, we had pads laid out, but Pierce is actually falling back onto pads, and we painted the pads out. But he still had to be up at the top of those stairs and falling back onto pads.
Towards a stuntman. He needs guts, that kind of thing.
He was really, the fact that he was able to go up and do that. And this was
Everybody talks to me about this moment that's seen the movie.
This was a lot of shots. And the other thing with this is the living room is a fairly compact space. So we were doing a lot of cheating spatially. And you guys, This moment here.
I love your face.
Yeah,
You were like, huh?
And that because we shot slow motion and because it was on film, we couldn't really tell if we got it or not. We thought we
it was
had,
great.
but yeah, we had. And that's another thing where all that stuff, there's no cartoon stuff there. That's all on wires that we paint out. It looked like a puppeteer's stage.
Love that.
His jagged little teeth right here.
I know, he was losing his teeth throughout the course of the movie.
That's right. And Nathan's score leading up to that point. This took a lot of explaining, a lot of work to get that blossoming of the blood exactly right, because it couldn't be gory. It had to look weirdly beautiful. It was gory, it would be too gross, and we'd get a ew effect. And so I kept describing it as a rose kind of opening in slow motion to the effects guys. And all the stuff with Sid and the powers, a lot of this imagery at the end was really inspired by Katsuhiro Otomo's work, who did Akira, but he also did a graphic novel before that called Domu, which is a beautiful graphic novel that's about kind of a kid with telekinetic powers going apeshit.
It's him. What is he, some TK freak? You knew.
Remember this scene we worked with you guys, and getting it up to this anger level was the big step. And actually doing that was something that we kind of on the day decided and found, and that shoved down to the ground, and the level that you take this up to is so necessary at this point, but that wasn't something that we knew sitting down to shoot it.
But I think it's great because that you got her panic, because when your child is at risk like that, you know, because he's taking off after him with these guns, and also it's nice for Joe because he's been so contained the entire movie.
Exactly,
you know,
it's the one thing of emotion you don't see from it is the anger. And we also had Dale Myron, by the way, our camera operator, did all this on Steadicam, and he was a champ. Oh, poor Sid.
The most unhappy day of Pierce's life.
So Pierce hated having this blood on his face. Pierce could not stand having this icky, disgusting blood on his face. He hated it so much.
His fake blood is very sticky. It's like syrup, and
it's like pouring maple syrup on yourself.
Yeah.
And so those.
And you wore it all over your face, right?
Yeah,
to make him feel better.
Right.
I glopped it all over, and I let him. It didn't really help much, but it got us out onto the set. And
you let him put it on you.
Yeah. But those tears, I mean, he was,
That's real.
He was really, really not happy. We just had to get it as quickly as we could and keep him as comfortable as we could. And he wasn't, in pain or uncomfortable. It's just he did not enjoy the feeling of having that stuff on there, yeah. But he was a trooper. He really got through it and gave the performance. Yeah, and because of that, we had to shoot all this so quickly. It was really so strategic in terms of how long we had Pierce before he just couldn't handle it anymore. And this shot, for example, he's not wearing the stuff on his face. I remember anything we could do without it, we did.
Things have happened. My Luke knows Sid's the kid he's looking for, and my gang knows I'm here. So that means in 15 minutes, one or both of them...
Joe, I sense you're just watching the movie.
I know.
I know, sorry.
He's completely baked up.
You haven't spoken in a while.
It's a good movie.
Just what they're talking about. The
Just
thing.
stop talking.
Yeah, exactly. Again, all fake cane. That's a parking garage, La Belle Aurore. That facade is actually a parking garage in the middle of New Orleans that Ed Verreau did a whole thing on the front of. Wow, wow.
I got him, Abe.
My dad's big scene is coming up here.
I love it.
This was my dad's big scene. He did so good.
Oh, bless him.
Big Craig. It was funny. My instinct was to cut around him, and I kept truncating him and cutting away from him. And our editor actually said, "You're doing that because he's your father. He's really good. You have to trust his performance and just let him do his lines."
Bullets, I got the loot. Not such a fuck up now, huh? I'm bringing him up to see you.
Ooh.
Yeah, this was a fun day.
I bet he loved it, though, did he?
You can't even see, but my dad has this gory prosthetics on his face when he falls. And one of his prized possessions is we took a picture of him with all that gore on his face with his arm around Bruce.
Oh, fantastic.
all the guns here and the gas. James Croning, who is our props master and who kind of figured out all the guns and did all that work throughout the movie and designed the blunderbusses, just did a fantastic job. There was originally much more to this sequence with him going through the tunnels and shooting everyone up. There's a lot more business, but we found that just kind of a short, brutal punch of it was all it needed.
It's so cool.
It was fun to shoot. I remember my mom was on set this night, and it was funny because anyone else in the universe, this would be the perfect night to show up on set because you're seeing Bruce Willis blazing through with machine guns, and my mom was so bored. She was like, "Are they going to talk at any point?" Like, oh. There was a lot of explosives and these two huge cannons filled with debris. Bruce was so into the amount of blood that we put on here. He was just like, let's do this. He said, if we're going to do it, let's do it. And he made me do it. He made me pour the blood all over his face.
Fantastic.
He just handed me the bottle. He took the cap off and handed me the bottle of blood.
He was like, do it.
He told us, he goes, do it.
I mean, this shot is so cool.
It's worth it. Mm-hmm.
Like your goddamn ties.
Not showing the confrontation between them was something that was just in the script and just made a lot of sense to me. People who've seen the movie have asked about it. It made sense to me to kind of, because we've seen people get shot. It's not like you're gonna get anything huge more than that scene out of seeing Abe's death scene. And more than that, though, what was really important about this was having this play from Kid Blue's perspective. Not getting the satisfaction of even seeing it. And as the audience feeling that you wake up and the whole party is over.
Right.
And you've messed up and this is all your fault and it's done. You weren't even involved in it. And getting the audience in that headspace, I think, was the real point of these couple of scenes. Noah again doing
On his 9th life.
quite a bit here. Yeah, he's the cockroach of this. That was the other reason it made sense to cut that previous thing, is because I think we just had one too many things where Kid Blue almost dies and doesn't. And I think it was taking it back just kind of helped the whole thing at the end here. Showdown.
This is the scene where we were shooting where at some point, I forget exactly what, after some take, Bruce just very casually was like, "You sound like me."
Oh,
It's like,
love
yes!
it. Love it.
Well, and specifically because the loud stuff was what you were concerned about. I remember talking to you
It's
about
true.
that.
Yeah, it's easier to do in quiet.
My life! Your life! Becoming you!
That's great, though.
Yeah. It's crazy how different it is.
Take everything you got! And everything I got! See what he becomes!
It's a lot of blood on his shirt. So that, for instance, I mean, that we actually did have, we shot 2 passes. We did one with the truck there and one with it not, but we drove the bike through on that truck rig. And all this stuff, it's removing physical rigs, but the bike is actually there in the scene.
It was fastened to a pickup truck.
It was, yeah. It was armed off the edge of a pickup truck. This was one of the last effect sequences we finished, and I was always nervous about it because all this dust was put in after the fact, and I think it ended up coming out all right.
That's a cool final confrontation between these two characters. Kid Blue's giving Joe all of his shit about his gun that can't shoot distance, and in the end,
comes back to it.
That's good writing.
Hey.
Yep.
Baby, we're going. Put your seatbelt on.
The layout of that farm is just it kind of I just can't get over how. Oh, you see the crop duster right there, the crop duster robot. That was the physical build of it. We kept making jokes that at the end in the edit room that if we needed to if we tested really badly and needed to have it be a happy ending, we were going to have the crop duster robot come through and save the day. Like just have him about to shoot her at the end, and the crop duster robot knocks him out of frame, going ticka ticka ticka. So we actually flipped that truck. We had a cable attached to it, and we did what they did in that one shot of Raiders of the Lost Ark, but we did it to a huger degree, where we had a cannon underneath the hood of the truck that fired a piston down into the ground and launched the truck back up and into the air, and then we painted out the piston, which they didn't have the technology to do. If you watch the one shot in Raiders where the truck goes on its side, I think to this day you can still see the piston sticking out of there. Yeah.
She's always falling. Look at
Always. Such a
stumbling around.
This field it was really dangerous because when you have a mowed down cane field, all those little bits that are sticking up are like daggers. And so I remember we had to cut a safe path through that you couldn't really see for you guys to run across. And then the birds that flew up in that big long shot.
I remember that, yeah.
Pierce's hit and fall there always impresses me.
Yeah,
Looks
the fact
great.
He led with his head and did the
Fantastic.
fall, and that's a tough thing to do.
How did you do that with the blood effect? Did that come afterwards? or-
Yeah, that was afterwards, yeah.
Here he comes.
There's the Fury.
Don't make him.
Yeah, you're gonna stick down Bruce
Yeah.
Willis.
Yeah. Boom.
So all this dust and all this grass, I was so nervous about because this was all done in post. But we
But
had
it's so cool.
we had a terrific effects company that ended up called Scanline, and they're based over in Germany, and they ended up just doing a fantastic job with it. But those poor guys, I was so nitpicky, and we would just spend months just saying that bit of grass looks fake, that bit of dirt looks fake, and saying it
Right.
back and forth. And they were so patient and worked their asses off. And
Look at that little face.
yeah. And with this too, I mean, with you guys, we had cranes out in the middle of the field, and we had you up on wires and just painted out the wires.
That was my first wire work.
Yeah, yeah. I
loved it.
like to break you in.
Bless him.
Bless.
This is the part of the movie that gets me every time.
Yeah.
Calm down. Good boy. Mommy loves you. Mommy loves you. It's okay.
I think that was
Real.
real because of the blood. He was actually so sick of having that blood on at some
Yeah,
point.
he was
The tears started
over it.
flowing, and we got one more mom out of him, and then he was done. See his little smile there right before he hugs you. 5-year-old poking through. Yeah, this was, we were out in the middle of this field shooting this whole sequence for about a week. And it was your first week, and it was Bruce's last week.
Yeah.
And it was hot, and there was no shade. And
Shit,
it was
that
just,
week was really hot.
yeah, it was a tough week. And you're in the middle of this dirty field.
Bruce would shade me with an umbrella between takes.
That's right, he had a little parasol.
He had a parasol. I don't know quite where he got this parasol, but it was a parasol.
Flowery
He
parasol.
was worried about my pale skin.
Yeah, rightly so.
Love this.
Then I saw it.
The voiceover here was a very, very late addition. Up until maybe the last month of editing, this played without voiceover. This played just silent. And then we had talked about it, and I remember you and I had talked about it at some point. I was
Yeah.
like, are you okay with that? And you said, I think that could actually really work. And so I wrote this, and we just gave it a shot. I think this might actually still be, I can't remember if this is the temp or if this is the final that we recorded. We might have left the temp in, the original thing that you
Goosebumps
did.
again.
Yeah.
I remember when you sent me just in an email your first draft of this voiceover.
Yeah.
And I was like, fuck yes, this is great. Like, let me do this.
Yeah.
So I
But
changed
it really needed it, and needed this little thing of Bruce reacting to it also
Yeah.
was a thing that we did this as like a one-day reshoot. We got Bruce back
Oh,
just
you
to
did?
just to get that reaction. Just because we needed one
Wow,
last
when
moment
did
of
you do
recognition.
that?
That was, I forget when it was. It was,
February.
February.
This
yeah.
last February.
Yeah, just on a stage in LA. And just to grab that last little reaction from him. But that and the voiceover, it just kind of helps to cinch that moment and really make it land. And that was, I remember, that was the first stuff that we all talked about was just, making the ending of this land is the challenge. Like, we kind of back everything up from there. And it's a tricky thing, making an ending like this feel satisfying, I guess. It can, and the worry was, we really have to earn it. It's got to, otherwise it'll feel cheap and like a cheat and just kind of like, oh yeah, I only killed, and building up to the level of emotion where it would feel earned and it would feel right was a huge part of just the work in the movie. Oh, bless.
Bless him.
Bless him.
He was embarrassed giving me that kiss.
No, he was not. He told you he was.
Just being coy.
We got lucky with the sun placement on this shot, gleaming off the silver.
Yeah.
This last cue of Nathan's is one of my favorites in the whole movie. He gave me like the tracks, and this is something I still will like listen to every few weeks. It's this last score.
It's so beautiful.
And Emily, what you're doing here at the end in your face when you kneel down by Joe, it's really beautiful.
You talked me through this one, I remember it.
It's really, really nice stuff. That's your hand.
That is my hand.
You insisted. Rightly so. Yeah, you always want to, it's always best when, obviously, when it's you guys doing it.
Yeah, it is.
And for something like this, it's just so essential. It is performance, Something this fine, it's, a lot of details going into that. That sky we replaced. That we added in. It was just a blank sky. And we put in those clouds. I had a vision. I wanted it to match the backdrop of Susie's bed. And it doesn't exactly, but it's fairly close. And originally, we also didn't go back to sit at the end. That was kind of a thing we discovered in the editing process.
Yeah, that wasn't in the script.
Yeah.
Who's that?
Emily, we've thrown out to Twitter asking people if they have any questions about the movie. Let's see. So you're in the middle of this Twitter experiment. Let's see what we got, Joe. Let's see if we got anything interesting.
Should we pause it while we look, or should we just see if we...
Let's pause it real quick. So, first of all, I should mention this song is a beautiful old soul song by Chuck and Mac, and it's something I found on this collection, which is
Eccentric. Eccentric Soul.
Eccentric Soul, and it's is it Numero, the name of the label? We'll double check at the end.
I forget.
Anyway, so we threw out to Twitter whether anyone had any questions. So we got a few questions from you folks. How much pressure was there to shoot with digital cameras over film and use CG effects? How can we keep film alive? I didn't get any pressure at all. I'm a film guy. I think film looks a lot better than digital. And we shot this on 35, and we did as much as we could practically and didn't get any blowback. And the answer to how you can keep 35 alive is to shoot with it. It's still the best looking image format, and it's also, I feel like the difficulties of it compared to digital are incredibly inflated. I feel like there's a fear of film and a feeling that it's more complicated and it's more difficult and it's exponentially more, there's just a fear of it. And that's baseless. It's really, in many ways, a lot easier shooting on film than on digital.
We just shot Don John's Addiction on 35 millimeter, and that's a really low budget movie. And it turned out to actually make more sense budgetarily to shoot on film than digital.
How long did it take to put JGL in the Bruce Willis look? It's 3 hours.
Yeah, it was 3 hours in the morning. By the end, after you practice it for months, they got it down to 2.5 hours in the morning. And it's about an hour. It was a half hour at the end of the day to take off.
Also, Joe couldn't eat while he had the stuff on. He could only drink these disgusting protein shakes.
They were disgusting. They got pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good. Anyway, if you ate at lunch, we had to do a half-hour reset. And so basically, Joe was tired, uncomfortable, and hungry for the entire length of the shoot. Did you make any significant changes to the script after running it by Shane Carruth? Shane Carruth is an incredible director. He's a friend of mine who did the movie Primer, which is one of the best time travel movies ever made. And I was lucky enough to be able to run the script by him and get some notes. No, I didn't really make any huge changes. He basically told me all the time travel stuff was wrong, and I said, screw you. And no, he made some good suggestions, but there weren't any major changes that ended up happening. But it felt good just to bounce it off of him. Let's see. You got anything good over there?
I heard on Brick, the cast watched movies like The Apartment. What did they watch on Looper?
I don't feel like I fed you anything specific for this one. Did I? You can correct me.
Well, it wasn't as, stylistic as Brick was. I mean, I was just listening to Bruce Willis's voice in various Bruce Willis movies.
That's right. And he actually recorded himself doing your monologues and sent you the recording.
That's right.
Help you. Was it ever considered to have the same actor play Joe with the use of makeup, etc.? One thing we did consider, I remember it's really briefly, was you brought up the possibility of you playing both parts.
Yeah, I begged you. Briefly.
It would have been great. You would have pulled it off.
Hey, thanks. I'm so glad we didn't do it that way.
Well, a big part, just because thematically it's so much about an old man looking at a younger man looking at an older man.
Yeah.
And you can't, as great as you would have. First of all, it's always hard to age up a young actor, I think.
Yeah.
I feel like even when it's fantastic makeup, you can always to some degree see through it.
Yeah.
But also, I just think you earn something with someone like Bruce sitting across the table from you.
Well, yeah, and I think no matter how good a young actor is or isn't, there's no faking what comes from a few more decades of life.
Right.
And, that's what Bruce has, and I wouldn't claim to have it. And that the character of older Joe should have that.
Right. Doctor Who time travel or Looper time travel, which would you choose? Doctor Who has a lot more fun than Joe has in this one, so I would choose Doctor Who time travel. What you got else over there? Kind of scanning through. Let's see. We got... What parts of the film do you think pay homage to science fiction, and how has sci-fi grown to let you be able to make Looper? Well, there's science fiction is such a, it's one of my favorite genres, but calling it a genre is almost deceiving because it's really something that always pairs with something else, or it usually does. The way that Blade Runner is a sci-fi noir, or Alien is a sci-fi monster movie, or Star Wars is a sci-fi and a lot of stuff mixed together.
Right.
I love sci-fi so much, but you really have to kind of talk about subgenres when you start getting into talking about sci-fi. And this, I'm not sure exactly. It's a couple things. Part of the pleasure of it starts kind of as a sci-fi time travel movie and kind of morphs by the end. It has some horror elements. It largely becomes kind of a Western by the end of it, I think. But to me, that was always part of the pleasure of it, was having this thing that kind of transformed and became something else by the end of it.
Right. Well, and I think that's all three of your movies. Is that, Brick was a detective movie, and Brothers Bloom is a con man movie, and this is a time travel movie, but they're all standing on the platforms of those genres in order to do something completely unique and not boxed in by that genre, but kind of using those tropes.
Well, it's also all these genres, especially sci-fi. It's something we grew up watching, we grew up absorbing. So for me, it's to sit down and write it. I reread Macbeth because the dynamic between it's the Numero Group right there is the name of the great label that puts out all these soul collections. Anyway, I read, because the dynamic between the witches giving Macbeth this information was similar to old Joe coming back and having this little bit of information that he acts on violently, and that ends up kind of destroying everything. So I think you have all the sci-fi stuff baked into you from watching all the movies. It's more interesting to look at stuff outside of that genre.
Also, Warren Zavala's name just went by. It's worth mentioning. He's
Warren.
my agent that helped a lot over the
Warren.
years that we were putting this movie together.
Warren really was one of the guys who put the whole thing together. And Ron Bergman, who I didn't get in the booth. You didn't come out here.
And now he's giving us the thumbs
He's
up.
giving us a thumbs up. I give you the finger. Get the fuck out of here. No fucking way.
Do your thing.